Well, we're ready to start. Welcome, everybody, to the Journalism Roundtable. I'm really excited and pumped here, just looking at the screen to see who was here and who's in the room. Hello, everybody. Can you hear me? Yes, okay, that's good. Okay. Well, good. All right. I'd say welcome to the Journalism Roundtable. This is an extension of, I'm Richard Prince, and this is an extension of the Journalism's column, which is about diversity issues in the news business. And our roundtable got started in 1999 when we wished a friend well who was going to get a doctorate in California. And she said, keep this going while we're gone. Well, she's gone. And we have every month since 1999 met in a Washington, D.C. restaurant until the pandemic. And then once the pandemic kicked in, we went to Zoom, and since the pandemic has waned, we've thought a way to have to keep everybody who was with us on Zoom, and also go back to being in person. And we did it once at American University. We're thankful for that, for them. And here we are at the Wall Street Journal Washington Bureau for our second hybrid roundtable, in person and in Zoom. And I want to thank James Grimaldi, our host. We're James for that. And we've got a good collection of people here in the Journal office. The Journal, we say that the purpose of the roundtable is to network and to learn. And for the networking in this format, we have the in-person people, but on Zoom, we have the chat room. And so feel free to message people who you want to get in touch with, and also message the whole group if you like. And then once this is ended, we'll send a printout of the chat comments to everybody who is on the Zoom. So there's that. I mentioned 1999, and I just want to show everybody my T-shirt here, which I'm going to get out. 1999 was the end of the century, and beginning of the next century. And it was handed out by people who were at the Washington Post at the time. And I have that here because we are planning to have a reunion of people from the Post at a time to be determined. We were supposed to do it after this session today, but there's too many competing events, so we postponed that. So, all right, that having been said, and without further ado, I want to first introduce Meryl Brown, who is a late addition to our lineup and eagerly anticipated because he works for GO Media as the editorial director, and he is about to hire the next editor of the Root. And so I want to ask Meryl to say a few words about what he's looking for and what the Root, what he envisions the Root becoming now that that's under his bailiwick. So Meryl, take it away.
Richard, thank you. I assume my audio is okay and everybody can hear me. Just one or two thumbs up would be great. Okay. Thank you, all the way from New York City here. So Richard, thank you for having me. This meeting and my participation in it began when I, quite simply because of how much I respect everything that Richard has done and his constant stimulating commentary on the Washington Post alumni site. I thought I'd reach out to Richard and see what thoughts he'd have on this challenge I have about finding a great next editor for the Root. And one thing led to another, and here I am. So I thank you, Richard, for this opportunity and for any thoughts you have on what we're trying to do at the Root. But to just give you a little bit of context, I am the editorial director where I've been since January, running a company that manages 10 websites. I usually start the conversation in explaining that to people by telling them I run the Onion, because I'm confident that whether someone's 20, 30, 40, or 80, they know the Onion, or at least something about it. So that's the Root and the Onion are two of the 10. But the Root is particularly important to me, quite frankly, because of its history, the legacy of people who have worked there, the ups and downs it's had through multiple ownership circumstances, and because of how critically important its mission is. And its mission is to cover a part of American life that is not always well covered. Its mission is to try to look under cracks where much of journalism doesn't necessarily get to. Its mission is to cover culture in ways that some publications do rather well, but not that many. And it's in a category where there's, I think, lots of editorial opportunity. So I don't want to claim to be the person who is going to tell the next editor-in-chief exactly what he or she should be doing with the position, but I am trying to find the right set of credentials and vision from someone who would be probably much more familiar with the category than I am. I think that goes without saying, but also who has the right journalism context, especially in this moment, and the business model challenges that all of us on this call are familiar with, but somebody who would not only appreciate the challenge of covering culture and politics in the current environment, but would understand how complicated the business model is. And I think I don't think I have to go through that for everybody on this call, because many of you live it every day. So that's a broad overview. This is, as I said, an extremely important opportunity for me to hopefully make a difference in a really important category by at least starting off with hiring a great, talented, experienced person to provide the vision, only part of which I can provide. So maybe that tees up a conversation, Richard, or lets people know a little bit about where I'm coming from. I could tell you more about where it is, but it's at a kind of an emerging stage of its development, and that next stage, hopefully to much higher levels, will be driven in large part by the new editor-in-chief that we'll bring on board hopefully quite soon.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you, Merrill.
Richard. Appreciate it.
All right. We can take a couple of questions for Merrill. Anybody have them online or in person?
I see a hand raised.
Oh, there's Michelle has one.
I'm not sure if anybody can see my hand with our setup today, but thank you, Merrill, for talking with us about the root position. I'm curious as to how far you want to take the root back to its beginnings. As we all know, it started as much more of a serious-minded entity than the one that we see today. It's had many evolutions. Are there plans to go back to basics in what I'm thinking must be the 25th year of the Roots operation? Are there plans to perhaps talk with Henry Louis Gates and revisit some of those initial notions?
Well, I highlight the business model challenge because it requires us to do many things in order to be successful. We want to write about politics. We want to write about all sorts of economic issues as well. We want to write about changing demographics of this country, and I could go on and list things. But we also have to be really smart about cultural issues and places where, to be quite honest with you, there are very large monetizable audiences. So I don't want to suggest we're going to go back to, as you put it, back to the very beginnings, where the content was very much focused on politics and national affairs, but that is central to our being successful. At the same time, we try to get the balance right with culture and arts and other things where there are large audiences and very meaningful business opportunities as well. We got to get the business model right in order to do everything we want to do.
Right,
what are the large monetizable audiences?
Well, by that I'm referring to largely to the arts and culture, where the ability to introduce somebody to what we're trying to do editorially via something out there, whether it's an interview with a hip hop artist, or writing about something going on with a movie opening or a concert, or writing about fashion and beauty and all that. At the same time, we're trying to cover global affairs through the perspective of the Root. That's the balance I'm describing, because driving people into the site so that we can, I'm sorry to be so cliched, monetize that audience is really, really central to making the rest of it successful.
Okay, thanks. I think I saw Corey Johnson with his hand up, but that correct, Corey? Unmute, please.
No, I didn't have my hand up.
Okay, all right, next.
Corey was stretching.
Anybody else have a question before we move on to the next segment?
Anyone interested in the position on this call, or anyone who knows anybody or would help me do some networking with it? It would be greatly appreciated. I'll throw an email address into the chat, and I would love to hear from you all with ideas about anything we're doing, whether it's editorial direction and so forth. Please be in touch.
Richard?
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry.
Richard,
Okay.
hi, it's Hazel. Hi.
Yes.
I just have a quick question.
Yes.
The Root, of course, started off as a Black-owned website. I'd like to know who owns it now. Is it still Black-owned?
No, it's owned by a large private equity firm who put together a combination of assets 3.5, almost 4 years ago, including the assets that were spun out of what was the Gawker company. So, and the Root passed through multiple ownerships, I think, including Univision, on its way to where it is today with us.
And what is the name of the private equity firm again?
Great Hill Partners.
Okay, thank
And
you.
just one correction, and the Root started out as a Washington Post owned entity, not Black owned.
That's what I thought.
Oh, no, I thought it was owned by Skip Gates. Forgive me.
It was co-owned. It was co-started by Skip Gates and Don Graham.
I'm sure Gates was a shareholder for sure.
Okay.
Hey, Meryl, it's Soledad. Do you think you could pop the job title, a good job description, and also the pay range in what you post? That would be really helpful as I think of some folks who I think might be interested.
Thanks, Soledad, right away.
Nice to see you, by the way.
Nice to see you.
And that was Joel Dreyfus, who was one of the early editors who just spoke a minute ago. Okay, well, thank you, Meryl. Thank you, everybody. Be sure to use that chat room to get some more information from Meryl or exchange information with him so we can keep up our networking. Next, I want to ask Hank Klibanoff to say a few words. Now, Hank was with us last year when he talked about the Georgia cold case project that he works with the students, and many will know him as the co-author of the book about I'm getting trying to blank on the name of it.
The Race Beat.
The Race Beat, of course. With all right, the Race Beat, and
Gene
also
Roberts.
at the Gene Roberts, and also at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. So take it away, Hank.
Thank you. Thank you for your ongoing support for what we're doing here at Emory, but also beyond that, starting back around 2009, a group of us got together with my congressman then, John Lewis. Phil Dixon came over from Howard. He and I had worked at the Philadelphia Inquirer together. Margaret Burnham came from Northeastern Law, where she runs the Civil Rights Restorative Justice Project. Robert Rosenthal came in from the Center for Investigative Reporting before Reveal. There was a group of us to talk to Congressman Lewis about the logjam that the Freedom of Information Act had created for us, and was as we were trying to get civil rights records from the Justice Department, records about cold cases that took place throughout the South, hundreds of cases that families had no idea that the government's holding records on. Scholars were having trouble getting the records, journalists were. And so it took a while for things to get going. It really got going seriously when Doug Jones was elected senator from Alabama. And of course, Doug had prosecuted the Birmingham church bombers, 2 of them. And Doug came in with legislation to change, the law. And we use as a model something recommended by a guy named Tom Blanton over at the National Security Archive. And that was the model used in creating the JFK Assassination Records Board, a review board, okay? And basically it creates this alternative and bypass of the Freedom of Information Act as regards these cold cases. Well, now we have a 4-member board. It should have been 5, but someone had to withdraw. And it's Margaret Burnham at Northeastern, Brenda Stevenson from UCLA, and a colleague of mine at Emory, Gabrielle Dudley, who's was nominated, or her name was put forth by the Society of American Archivists, and myself. And Margaret and I are co-chairs of this. We are at the point, we're fully sworn in, we got approval from the Senate. And by the way, the legislation was very bipartisan. I won't go into it in detail now, but I will tell you that on the day Doug Jones goes to the well to introduce this bill, and it's a fool's errand to think that it's going to pass, right? This is in the previous Senate, the Republican Senate, controlled Senate. And he's got one co-sponsor, Claire McCaskill, okay? And as he's speaking, the presiding officer that day is a senator from Texas, Ted Cruz. And after Doug finishes, Ted Cruz, all but in tears, goes over to Doug and says, I knew none of this. I mean, I knew about civil rights, knew these stories, but I didn't know that we, the government, are holding all these records and people can't get them. He says, I think this is a virtuous legislation. Sign me up. And the bill passed with bipartisan support in the Senate and then in the House, where Congressman Bobby Rush was the lead sponsor. So this bill passes. President Trump never got around to naming the members of the board. And President Biden put it on his first 100-day list. And that's what we're doing now. It took us a while to get sworn in, all that. And we are now at the point where we are hiring people to operate the Civil Rights Cold Case Records Review Board, to go after these records, to read them, to now a lot of the way the law works, and I'm going to keep this short out of respect for what else we really want to hear today. The way the law works, that every agency that has federal records in their possession about the Civil Rights Cold Case is responsible for going through those records, looking at them, and deciding what can be released and what needs to be redacted. And then they turn it over to us, both in the unredacted version and their proposed redactions. And then we decide whether we agree with them. And our predisposition very clearly is toward release of almost everything possible. The exemptions in our law, the things that are allowed to be exempted and redacted, are much fewer than are in the Freedom of Information Act, okay? So we have a lot of latitude there to release things. And that is our goal, to release as much of this as possible. We are looking for, and I'll put it in the message, we're looking for a chief of staff, we're looking for an attorney, we're looking for 6 researchers, a communications specialist, an executive administrative person, 10 people in all. And these are good jobs. They're paid at the federal level, the GS on, I think, the high of 15 on down. I was impressed by the salaries. I had no idea what the government was paying. And I will just leave it there. Now, here's the thing. GSA and the Office of Personnel Management will not allow me to post the job description yet, because it's not posted on the usajobs.gov. Okay, and I sort of understand that they want to keep it fair, make it fair to everybody, so Hank just doesn't invite his friends. Sorry, guys, you're my friends. But so I'm going to ask you to, I will send out another notification when it's posted, Chief of Staff. That's our first big hire. And that's going to be a big job, an important job, a job that can really make a difference and will help us then hire the others. So I'm going to post everything I can. I mean, what my little thing that I first sent to Richard right now, my message is too long. Oh, well, I'll do it in a minute, guys, 2 messages. But thank you. You'll see how to reach me on this, and I'm happy to answer any questions. It's a little easier for me to talk in a more relaxed phone call instead of speaking at 100 miles an hour. But it's good to see so many familiar faces, including Meryl. Haven't seen Meryl in a long time. We actually we're in college together. So.
Hey, Hank.
All right, now in the email I sent yesterday, people should have.
Yes, I saw that.
Okay,
right. That was good.
Yeah.
Right.
That's good. Anybody got one question for Hank from anybody?
I have one, Richard.
Yes.
Is there a list somewhere that shows the distinctions between the Freedom of Information Act and your law? In other words, what are the items that you could get under this law that you can't get under the Freedom of Information Act?
One thing, first of all, we now know that there are going to be far fewer, because we know, because NARA has done this research, there's not going to be very many national security issues, okay? The 350,000 pages in the MLK assassination file will have a fair number of national security exemptions, postponements, as they call them, redactions, okay? But most of ours won't, so that's already figured out, okay? And maybe you can tell me I'm wrong on this. I know that ours allows them to redact only living confidential informants. And I believe in the old act, they did not necessarily have to be living confidential informants to be redacted. Okay, so a lot of time, and you'll love this if you've had frustration getting redacted, is we're going to go back and look at records that have already been redacted and released and see if how many of the names and passages we can unredact. Okay, we are given some authority. I think you'll like this, and I'm trying not to yell this too loudly because I don't want to get people's hackles up, but we're going to look at grand juries, federal grand juries. As you may know, this has gone all the way to the 11th Circuit on this one case involving the Morris Ford case. We have a say-so on that. And we can at least, if we want grand jury records, we can at least force the Justice Department to have to take it to the Attorney General if they object. And there are advocates, we know, within the Justice Department for releasing grand jury records. So those are among the things that we just have to, and that's some of this is, I don't want to say political, but some of this is getting to know people and getting to meet them every day. And the chief of staff will be at the FBI, will be meeting people at DOJ, will be, talking to people and getting to know them and making an impression on them.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Hank.
Thank you so much, Richard. Thank you all.
All right.
Okay.
Any more questions or exchanges you want, please continue in the chat room. So thanks. All right, I wanted to just make sure I mentioned that Roy Wood Jr., if you didn't see the message, he lost his voice last week and won't be able to be with us, but he's going to have a rain check. So stay tuned for the return of Roy at a future roundtable. I wanted to make sure people knew also that we have an opening at Journal-isms. We're looking for a managing editor. So if anybody's interested in joining me in that venture, let me know, please. And what else would I want to mention? Oh, Michelle Johnson. And some of you who are here, and not those on Facebook, who I also want to say hello to, may know that Michelle Johnson, who is a veteran, a Boston veteran, who is a professor emerita at Boston University and used to work at the Globe, she RSVP'd for this, but couldn't do this because she is now in the hospital. She thought to be out by now, but that's not the case, having some brain issues and spinal cord issues. So she is on Facebook and sending messages. So those of you who are on Facebook, you can go to her page, and she'd appreciate hearing from us. So that's that. Now I wanted to be sure to get to people who may have to leave soon. So I wonder if Marjorie Miller is I don't see her on this screen, but she may be on another screen, who's the administrator of the Pulitzers. Marjorie, are you there? Okay. So can we switch to where she is? This is the whole screen? It can't be the whole screen.
No, she's there.
Okay, Marjorie, can you hear us? Okay.
She might not be here.
Maybe she's not there. Okay.
No, she's there. I was just texting with her and she's just on.
She was here.
Okay, we'll have to get back to her then. let's see. Is Caitlin here? Caitlin Dickerson? Caitlin, are you there? No, okay. All right, we want to go to our, what's that? Caitlin?
No.
Oh, Marjorie.
I don't see.
Okay, all right, we'll move on. We wanted to go to our segment here on the Pulitzer, which is the main attraction here. We wanted to congratulate the winners and find out how the rest of us who have not won Pulitzers can do so. So I want to ask of those who are winners this year, first of all, to congratulate you, and to tell us a little bit about how you did what you did and how the rest of us, what the rest of us can learn from what you did. So since James is right here in the James Grimaldi of the Wall Street Journal is one of the winners this year. Tell us more, James.
Well, yeah, it essentially started a couple of years ago when we did the project on federal judges. And I had this kind of crazy idea that we would get every financial disclosure form for every federal judge and look to see if they had any conflicts of interest. Amazingly, they actually bought this idea, and we published that story 2 years ago. And then the editor, Matt Murray, was reading those stories, and he said, well, have we ever done this for every federal official where there's a public financial disclosure form? And that launched the series that ended up winning this year, which found, basically federal regulators investing in companies that they regulated. In terms of being able to do this or replicate it, I mean, I have to give the journal credit for, they kept adding bodies. And, I give a lot of credit also to the data people because we assembled, records on 15,000 federal officials. We had literally millions of transactions. We created a database that we use internally, which we could search and we could query. We used AI in order to fact check it and down to, a fraction of a percentage point of accuracy, and then used it to find the examples that we had in our series. So, basically 7 of us, who worked on it. Like I said, the data guy, John West and Chad Day and Coulter Jones did a lot of that, but we all did a lot of data input as well, where they would tell us what to do or go fact check this file and down to a scientific, level of accuracy. So that's basically what happened. And, having been a judge for the IRE contest, it's an honor, really. It's anyone who won. We had a lot of good candidates, even in our category. So, I think we're all pretty proud of the fact, obviously, we're an honor that we were featured this year. And, anyone who was, as far as I'm concerned, was nominated is in my view, a winner, because just about anyone could, you get to a certain level, you could kind of pick a lot of these candidates. But we did put a lot of work into it. It was an enormous amount of work, and it's really gratifying to be, recognized.
Here, here.
Investigate. All right. The 3rd time I've been associated with an investigative Pulitzer.
Now, if Marjorie's here, I think, oh, okay, good. I think she would say, and Kevin Merida, who might be here as well, one of the judges, would say that you don't have to be a big news organization to win one of these. I wonder if that's correct. Marjorie, are you there?
I'm here. Sorry.
Okay.
And I apologize for earlier. Of course, I got a call. So, but I'm going to mute my phone now.
But do you have to be a big news organization too, with plenty of resources in order to win one Pulitzer?
You don't have to be a big news organization, but you do have to have some resources because the journalists need to have time to do the work. And that's the perpetual struggle, I think. But I felt really good this year because there was a good spread. I mean, not only were the big organizations like the Times and the Post and the Wall Street Journal honored for their work, but we had a lot of local news organizations also like AL.com and Mississippi Today, some newer digital media. And, we've had other regional papers such as Tampa and Milwaukee. And so no, but it is hard for smaller news organizations to free up the journalists and free up the money that it can take to do some of that data reporting or travel. And so that's the challenge.
Okay. Last year you mentioned that you wanted to be the Pulitzers to be more public facing. In other words, to be more transparent about what it does and not be such a mystery. How have you come with that?
Well, we had our first Pulitzer on the Road panel, and Corey was one of the people on that panel. And we plan to continue this year. That one was about health and safety journalism, Pulitzer winning or a finalist in one case and for a Pulitzer, and how it helps people in their communities, because there can be a lot of skepticism about the value of journalism. So it went very well, thanks predominantly, I think, to Corey. And it was, we had about, I think, 125 people in the room on a weeknight in Madison, Wisconsin, and we had about 400 people live streaming the event. So we'll be doing another one in the fall, and then I hope to gear up to do maybe 3 or 4 a year of those events. And further, I'm going to try to participate in more book festivals and other kinds of festivals, and maybe professional organizations who would want to hear from I'm just throwing this out there, but medical organizations that might want to hear about medical reporting that gets done, that wins prizes, things like that.
Very good. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Corey, are you there? Corey Johnson. Your name was just mentioned. What did you say that that was so impressive?
Well, we just got into the things that a lot of readers don't get a chance to see about the journalistic process. So I had one of the victims in the story, his wife was there on the panel with me.
Right, victims in what story?
This was the lead story. So
you have to explain that to folks who didn't.
Yes. So Marjorie, last year I was the winner in the investigative reporting category, me and 2 other of my teammates at the Tampa Bay Times. And what we won for was we found a lead plant, a lead factory, the last remaining lead factory in the state of Florida, which was in our backyard, that was secretly and knowingly poisoning its workers, hundreds of workers, as well as the surrounding community, and that they knew about it. The doctor that they had on staff was looking the other way, and there was some real consequences where there were people who were having heart attacks, strokes, a few deaths. The workers' children were getting poisoned, and they were having problems, and that the company took steps to conceal this from the government, but they didn't have to do much because the local government and the system that was supposed to be checking had completely collapsed. And so what was powerful about the series, this was a private company, so we had to do all kind of things in order to get at this information and when
you went on the road with this.
So
what kind of reaction did you get?
I'm giving that background to say that these are the things that regular readers don't usually get a chance to hear or see. And so when we went on the road, I had a victim family as well as a governmental source, one of the regulators who had hovered in the background, but who decided to come on the record. And they all talked about the process and the importance of what we were doing and how that impacted them. They talked, the victim's wife talked about the personal impact of the journalism, but the regulator also talked about the impact the journalism had on their decisions inside the government and the actions that they took. So they took real, tangible actions to correct this stuff as a result of the journalism. And so for people who are kind of in this fake news energy, or we don't want to fool with journalists or enemies of the people, it was just a real tangible way in plain language to make what we do real. And I think sometimes as journalists, we take it for granted. We think it's inside baseball and all this other stuff, but there's a real need, even now in this more divisive, politicized environment, for journalists to make what we do real so that people can understand the value. And so I think what the Pulitzer on the Road panel did was to make it real and make it whole for people to see. And the response was pretty powerful in the room.
All right, very good. Thank you, Gordon. Appreciate that. I noticed that, and I wrote an exercise in my column on this, that on the awards, that a lot of the awards went to people covering racial and class issues. And I thought that was interesting because it was, while people had done that before, the breadth of starting from the whole history of the country and to the present day was all reflected in the awards. And one of them was from Kyle Whitmire, and I see Kyle is here, of AL.com in Birmingham. He won for measured and persuasive columns to document how Alabama's Confederate heritage still colors the present, with racism and exclusion told through tours of its first capital, its mansions and monuments, and through the history that has been omitted. So, Kyle, I wondered if you could expand on that a little bit.
Well, first, I would like to answer the question of how to win a Pulitzer Prize. Come to Alabama. Come to Alabama. We had two this year. We have 4 in the last 5 years and 1 finalist just at AL.com. I'm not saying that to brag on the really great people that I get to work with at AL.com, because they deserve to be bragged on. But we have, I would not call it an embarrassment of riches, but maybe an embarrassment of poverty here. And, there is opportunity here for great journalists to do great journalism. And I'm very proud to be one of those folks. How this came about, in the early days of the pandemic, I did not know what the future of my news organization was going to be, because it was a very uncertain time. We'd always sort of lived with the assumption that we were always one bad recession away from, a lot of people losing their jobs, and no one is guaranteed a job when cuts like that come. And so when the pandemic started, I just kind of started looking around. I said, is this it? How much time do I have left here? And, I'm sort of getting an age I have, children now, and I start wondering about what their futures are going to be like. And I decided that, I'm the state political columnist here, so much of my job is going to Montgomery and finding which ne'er-do-well has done the dumbest thing lately and calling them out for it. It's again, we have 3 columnists and we never write about the same thing. We have plenty here to write about and plenty of ne'er-do-wells. But I didn't want to build another sandcastle. I really wanted to sort of get to the heart of why this state that I've grown up in is so broken. And it has been sort of a rite of passage here for columnists and editorial writers to take their shot at the Alabama Constitution of 1901 It is the longest constitution in the world. It is based in, it is even with some of the language that has been struck out, it is, the structural issues are all very much still there. They tried to rename it the Alabama Constitution of 2022 after some changes made last year. I call it AKA the Constitution of 2022. It is still very much this nasty racist document. I went to my editors. I said, this is what I want to do. I want to look at the 1901 Constitution, but also sort of the context in which it was created. And that goes back to Reconstruction. And it's actually not so much Reconstruction as the period immediately after Reconstruction. And I just began doing the reporting on it. I spent about 6 months of reporting before I wrote the first piece. And what became clear to me was that there were pieces of my state's history, despite me having grown up here and lived here my entire life, that I did not know. After the anniversary and all the good reporting that was done around the Tulsa massacre, there was a map that I believe it was New York Times shared, that they published, of similar race massacres around the country. And there's a little X on Eufaula, Alabama, this small town in southeast Alabama along the Chattahoochee River. And I said, what the heck happened there? And I intended for this one piece to be at first 3 or 4 paragraphs and another piece about house museums and antebellum mansions and how much money we spend on these things. And before I was done, it grew into a 6,000 word installment in this. And when I say, again, come to Alabama, one of the other Pulitzer winners outside of the journalism category is Jefferson Cowie, who won this year for his history of Barber County, where Eufaula is. He and I had sort of the same thought at the same time. And his book came out, I believe, in November. And we're calling each other on the phone, comparing notes when we found each other. And one thing that was clear from our conversations is there's just so much more there. And not just in the past, because this series, as we tried to make very clear, was not about Alabama's past. It is about Alabama's present. It is about how we got to where we are right now, and all the things that we have not reckoned with, all of the lies that still continue to be told in textbooks, in classrooms, and how many times the sort of things that we are seeing today with people going into schools and trying to limit and restrict what is taught there have happened before. One of the installments was about, and I know I'm filibustering here, but then I'll bring it to a close. But one of the installments was about a woman named Marie Bankhead Owen, who very much shaped the way Alabama history is told. And she worked for the Daughters of the, she was a member of the Daughters of the Confederacy. They led a campaign to go into classrooms to make sure that a very specific version of history was taught. And we could go back and look at that campaign, and it looks exactly like the sort of thing that we're seeing in schools and school boards today. So anyhow, I'm getting that's a lot for.
That's good. One other question: when you mentioned the Constitution, I'm sorry. When you mentioned the Constitution being racist, what exactly did you mean?
Well, the Alabama Constitution of 1901 was written to disfranchise Black Alabamians. Before, through Reconstruction, you had enfranchisement and then disenfranchisement. And it was the means by which the planters, the plantation owners, and sort of this new class of North Alabama industrialists who would reap the benefits of convict leasing, sort of wrote the source code for Alabama to benefit themselves and to take power away from not just Black Alabamians, but poor white Alabamians too. They were terrified of what I call the sort of the blazing saddles moment. You had this populist uprising in the 1890s where poor white Alabamians and Black Alabamians, newly freed, began to realize that they had a lot in common, and that if they hitched their wagons together, they would get a lot further. They came very close to doing so. And, you know, the elites in our state said, no, we're not going to have that. They passed a constitution in 1901. It was based, and there were several constitutions, state constitutions throughout the Southeast. They're similar that Alabama patterned its on. The first one was done in Mississippi. They called this sort of pattern of disfranchisement the Mississippi Plan, and it was very successful at what they set out to do, and it is still there, and it is still in our lives in ways that don't always appear based in race. For instance, it has structured our taxes in such a way that if you live in an urban area or a suburban area, you probably have the tax base that you need to support your child's school. If you are in the Black Belt or if you're in rural Alabama, it keeps control in Montgomery in such a way that those communities can't raise their taxes to be able to support their children's schools. And so it really manifests itself in a lot of ways. Most recently, our fights over monuments. If you want to move a monument in Alabama, you've got to go to Montgomery today and ask for permission. That's the system that the 1901 framers set up. That's exactly how they wanted it to work.
Wow. All right. Thanks, Kyle. This is
I always spent a year working on this. I can talk a long time.
No, that's fine. This is as I said, there's more to be done in the chat room, and we'll get back to it during the discussion. I want to move though to Tolu, who is here from the Washington Post, and he and Robert Samuels introduced their book. His name is George Floyd, at our roundtable last year. And look at them now. You see what the coming to the roundtable does for you. So congratulations to Tolu.
Thank you so much. It's really great to be here. And Robert couldn't be here, but he sends his best regards. He's traveling this week, so I'll speak up for both of us. But we're obviously super honored to have gotten this award, this prize. It's something Robert and I have both kind of aspired to from the beginning of our career, and we started working together about 15 years ago at the Miami Herald, and our careers went separate ways for quite a while, and then Robert actually played a big role in recruiting me to the Washington Post, sort of constantly asking me to send my resume, and it took about 6 or 7 years, but eventually we reunited. And working on this book was the first time we had an opportunity to work together on a major project. And the idea is not too dissimilar from some of the things we heard earlier about sort of the importance of, taking a story and allowing it to be broader than just an individual person's story. So we wanted to focus on George Floyd's story. We both had worked on the series that ran in the Washington Post in October of 2020. This was about 3 or 4 months after George Floyd was murdered. There was a sense at the Washington Post that, we could do a profile of George Floyd like everyone else was doing in the immediate aftermath after he died. And there were stories after he died about his life and the people who knew him, but we knew that something was different about his death and what it sparked in the country. And we wanted to take our time to do something a little bit more in depth. And so we took several months in the height of the presidential campaign in 2020 to go deep on his life and tell a story, not just about the way he lived, but the America that he lived in, and what his death and his life could tell us about the country that we all know, but we don't really know in some ways. And so we did a series of stories that looked at institutions, and the thesis of the series was that, long before George Floyd was killed by Derek Chauvin, he, was suffocating under American systemic racism in various institutions. And so we looked at his experience in the housing sector with segregated housing, public housing in Houston's Third Ward. There was an article about his experience in the school system and how injustice and racial segregation in the school system left him, suffering with that kind of systemic racism. There's an article about the criminal justice system and how the war on drugs and the impact of over-policing in certain communities, left him with very few options to make a living. And also a story about his experience in the healthcare system and how, his experience with addiction was treated much differently than how we see the opioid crisis being dealt with today. And so we looked at a number of these different systems, and we did this series with our colleagues at the Post. And even after doing this series, which won the Polk Award and got a Peabody and was really well received, we knew that we had only kind of scratched the surface of his story. And so we had an opportunity to turn the series into a bigger project, turn it into a book, a full-length project that, allowed us to go even deeper on George Floyd's life, to get even more biographical about his experience and write his story as if it was a novel, a coming-of-age novel, an American story, with all its trauma and tragedy and triumphs and everything in between. And so we were able to add some of that context as we, expanded the series into a full-length book. We were able to go deep into his own family history. Kyle talked about, 1901. 1901 in George Floyd's family history was a moment of great pride. His great-great-grandfather was quite wealthy, owned 500 acres of land, had worked hard during the Reconstruction period after being born enslaved, and was able to, amass a certain level of wealth. But that early 20th century, which may feel like a long time ago, was a time of, racial terror. It was a time of, Plessy versus Ferguson. And shortly thereafter, we had Black Wall Street being burned down. And so this was a time in North Carolina, where George Floyd's ancestors were from, where they saw all of their wealth that they had worked for decades to build, all of that wealth was stripped away. And we were able to document how that impacted the various generations of George Floyd's life until he comes into the world in 1973, born into deep poverty, even though his ancestors had all worked hard, they hadn't broken laws, they hadn't done anything financially unwise. They had just worked hard, but they had been exploited by racism. And so we tried to answer a number of different questions about his life, like why was he born poor? Why was he in Minneapolis when he was killed? What led him to leave his family and his hometown behind to move to a new city to try to get a fresh start? And we were able to answer a number of those questions. I can't get into everything in the book, but we were able to answer quite a number of questions and go pretty deep on his life. And one of the things that we believe the judges saw that we tried to do was to tell George Floyd's story as a story of America, to tell it as a story that has an impact on all of us. It's a story that should be thought about not only because he died in this heinous way on camera, but also because of the way he lived. And he was an ordinary man in a number of ways. And so if he hadn't died on camera, maybe none of us would ever know about him. But we tried to restore some of that humanity and restore the importance of his story by writing about the way he lived, writing about the institutions that he tried to navigate, and writing about the fact that even as he experienced troubles and trauma and sometimes even made mistakes, he constantly continued to believe in the American dream. He constantly continued to believe that if he picked himself up and tried again, that he could have an opportunity to make it. And so we tried to infuse a lot of that into the story as well, because there is, pain and suffering and racism in the story, but there's also a lot of, striving. As a story of not only George Floyd, but his family and his community constantly striving against immeasurable odds. And so we try to infuse that into the story as well.
Let me ask you a question, October. First of all, I forgot to mention, as Kyle was talking, that the National Association of Black Journalists Convention this year is in Alabama. It's in Birmingham. So That's why Kyle said, come on over. But now, Tola, last time when you and Robert were talking when the book came out, you had some conclusions about the extent of structural racism in this country, and that's what a lot of the reason why George Floyd's life was the way it was. But I'm wondering now, since the book has been out now a year, or almost coming on a year, how much change do you see has there been in the country? Are we going forward toward alleviating some of these things, or are we going backward, or what?
There's definitely been change, and we were able to capture some of it in the book because we wrote the book basically a year after George Floyd died, and a little bit almost going into a year and a half after he died. The book came out about 2 years after he died. And so we were able to capture some of the change that had taken place, as well as some of the backlash. We saw the backlash to critical race theory. We saw, some political opportunism from some people who wanted to take advantage of the fact that people were a little unsettled by the amount of discussion we were having about the country's history. And so we document that, there are a number of police departments that have banned some of the techniques that were being used against George Floyd. Some of them have banned no-knock warrants, like the one used against Breonna Taylor. Some of them have questioned how much money we're spending on policing and whether or not some of that money can be used elsewhere. It's most of what has happened on a local level, happened in our culture and corporations. When it comes to the federal level, which is sort of what George Floyd's family and a lot of the activists were looking for, a big civil rights bill in his name, that did not pass. It got caught up in a lot of the back and forth that our politics often gets caught up in. And so we have seen a pushback to the summer of George Floyd, where a number of people are saying maybe we shouldn't be reading some of the books that are focusing on the country's history. Maybe we should be banning some of those books. And so it's sort of a situation where there has been progress in some ways, and we don't want to discount that, but there's also been a pushback. And that's in many ways the story of civil rights in this country, is that a lot of times when there is progress, there's a major backlash, and the progress happens in fits and starts, and sometimes there's retrenchment before progress continues. So we're kind of in the middle of that now, and I don't think the story has been fully told about sort of where the impact of George Floyd's death is going to be when history is finally told about this era. But I think that's something that we're kind of living through in the moment as we see these things play out.
Right, first rough draft of history, as they say. All right, before we go to our public service winner, I wonder we can take a couple of questions for Kyle and Tolu. Who's got his or her hand up? Anybody? Okay.
There's one in the chat.
Okay, what's the one in the chat?
It says, wondering how this is Philip Martin.
Oh, Philip, yeah.
How our Pulitzer Prize winners are viewing their stories and findings against the backdrop of serious assaults on democracy.
Yes, Philip. WGBH Boston.
How's it going, folks? I don't need to repeat the question. Thank you.
Okay. All right, who wants to answer that one? Tolu, Kyle.
I can take a crack at it. I think we're kind of going through some of that as we speak. And we saw January 6th happen. We've seen people trying to ban books. We've seen a number of different ways that the pillars of democracy have been under assault. And some of that is because this kind of journalism can make people uncomfortable. Journalism and reporting and research that uncovers unsavory parts of the country's past can make people uncomfortable. The fact that we're talking about some of these issues can make people do things that are extreme. And so I think it makes it more important for us as journalists to continue to shine a light on these things, even if it does lead to some level of discomfort, because it's important for some of these things to be brought to light and for people's experiences to be recognized and honored in a way that they haven't been in the past. And so I just think it makes it feel even more important to be doing this kind of work, so that the kinds of things that people are trying to sweep under the rug or hide with book bans can be brought out into the public, so that people can learn and get the information for themselves and then make their own decisions, which is, you know, a key part of democracy, and that's a key thing that's under assault right now.
Okay.
I think to just elaborate on that a little bit more, I think that the assault on democracy is a big part of why I undertook this project, because we're beginning to see a lot of the same things all over again that we've seen in the past here in Alabama, from sort of incremental voter disfranchisement. Alabama did not ever get anything like early voting or, you know, vote by mail, but even absentee procedures have become more and more restrictive. And we're beginning to see, you know, for instance, we had a lawmaker, the bill died, thankfully, but he wanted to pass legislation making it a felony to protest in a street and to block traffic. And his colleagues in the Alabama legislature had to tell him, well, you know, we already have a law like that on our books. And it was struck down by Frank Johnson in 1865 when some people were walking in the street from Selma to Montgomery. Yeah, it is
1965. 1965.
I mean, I'm sorry. I've been living in the 1800s.
It's time you get out of there.
I really want to get to this 21st century I keep hearing about. But yeah, it is. No, the assault on democracy is very much a driving force for why I did this. And Kathy, I see your note in the comments there. I had to like reboot my chat, and I was trying to answer some questions in the chat when I had reboot Zoom. So if you ask me a question in the chat, please ask me again so I can get there, because it deleted all the chat messages people were sending at me.
What's Kathy's question?
Kathy and I used to work at Birmingham City Hall. She was a TV reporter for NBC 13 years and years ago. The only person that they rolled their eyes at more than me was sometimes her. She gave them hell. We miss her a lot.
That's Kathy Times he's talking about, the former president of the NBC. Okay. All right. One more question then for either.
We have two hands raised.
Okay. Who are the two hands? I can't see.
Hazel and Rebecca.
Let's go, Rebecca.
Thank you, Richard, for a great conversation as usual. Kyle, I wanted to know what kind of feedback did you get from the white community, since some of them, I'm sure, are older, maybe carried on the false narrative on the history down there. Mm-hmm. I'm saying down there because I live in Dallas, so it's over there.
Mixed. There were a number of people, I mean, who gave me the response that I anticipated. You know, this is our heritage. You just don't want us to have our own culture, et cetera, who are still sort of locked into the lost cause narrative. One of the things I was proudest of, though, with this series was that I purposefully tried to avoid some of the language and shortcuts, like using the term lost cause a lot, so that people might slip into it without realizing that I was writing about them. And, you know, and I had an encouraging number of people say to me, I hadn't thought about this like this before. I had one moment where I interviewed 2 sons of Confederate veterans and 3 daughters of the Confederacy in a house museum that was decorated with Confederate battle flags. And I was very upfront. I didn't hide why I was there. I said, this is what I'm trying to do. And in the course of our conversation, we talked for about 2 or 3 hours. And I told him the story that I had not yet published the story yet, but I told him the story of the Eufaula election massacre in 1874, and how if you go to Eufaula today, you will see monuments to the Confederacy. You will see monuments for every other war this country's been in since then. You will see a little monument to a fish named Leroy Brown that was pulled out of Lake Eufaula and kept in a bait shop tank for 7 years. You will not see a monument or a marker or anything to memorialize where somewhere between 7 and 10 people were killed and 80 others wounded right there in the middle of the street. And I told them that story. They said, well, there should be something like that there. Like that deserves to be remembered. So incrementally, I think progress is being made. I don't know how to do it on the scale and at the speed with which I feel it is necessary, if that answers your question. Now, let me answer a slightly different question, which is how public officials responded to it. I would say that most of them have not. The only real response that we've gotten was there was $25,000 a year being given to that museum I just talked about with the rebel flags all over the walls. And this year, our Governor Kay Ivey put $50,000 into the budget for that museum. I think that was her way of sending me a message. But I think things are getting better and we are making progress, but it is going to take probably more time than I have or any of us have. And that's unfortunate. I hope that changes, but.
And real quick, what was the governor's reaction to your story and your research?
Indifference. And again, as far as that particular museum goes, she doubled the amount of money that's going to what is basically a Confederacy museum, a lost cause museum that tells, a version of history that's just, it ain't real. So.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, let's move on to the award for public service. We have Ron Nixon here to talk about that. Ron is the Vice President for News and the Head of Investigations and Enterprise for the AP. And AP won the award for public service for courageous reporting from the besieged city of Mariupol that bore witness to the slaughter of civilians in Russia's invasion of Ukraine. So Ron, tell us how that all came about.
Thanks, Richard. Thanks for having me here to talk about this. And then before I get into that, I do want to give a shout out to 2 amazing women of color who were instrumental in this project, that it would not have been what it is without them. In particular, Mary Rajkumar, who is the International Investigations Editor. She's originally from Singapore. This is, again, this would not be possible without Mary. And then Jeannie Ohm, who is a senior producer for investigations, Korean American, who all the visual, there were 3 visual pieces that were submitted as part of that package that won for public service. And Jeannie was responsible for those. So without those 2 amazing women, this would not have been possible. This started with the Russian invasion of Ukraine, which started in Mariupol. And 3 journalists, Ukrainian journalists, Mstislav Chernov, Evgeny Malatenko, and Vasilisa Stefanenko went to Mariupol before the invasion because they were thinking that if the Russians were going to invade Ukraine, that's where it's going to happen. So they went there before that, and hours after they got there, the Russians invaded Ukraine. So the three of them actually spent nearly 3 weeks in Mariupol under Russian assault on the city when all the other international journalists had pulled out. So they were, for nearly 3 weeks, they were the eyes and ears for the world on what was happening in Mariupol. And during this time, they are under bombing. They are also on these Russian hit lists because the Russians are after them. The Russians had this disinformation campaign saying that everything that they were saying was not true, that it was all disinformation. So ultimately, Ukrainians came and said, you guys need to go because the Russians are going to capture you and they'll make you say that everything that you've reported is false. So, but before they left, there was a medic nicknamed Tara who had recorded gigabytes of what was happening in Mariupol. So she gave it to them and Vasilisa smuggled it out in a tampon. And so they went through 15 Russian checkpoints to get out of Mariupol. And did this information, I mean, they were reporting throughout, but the information that they got, they followed up and did additional stories after they'd gotten out, mainly working with Lori Hennett, who's an investigative reporter based in Paris. Lori also made several trips into Ukraine. And then we just threw every resource that we had at this because we figured that, look, everybody's going to cover Ukraine. But what can we do to really dive in on what's happening there? So we had two tracks. One was this package that won the public service, and we had another track focusing specifically on war crimes. But in this particular one, we wanted to really go deep into what was happening in Mariupol. So we started out with the invasion and then a last story about the Russians' attempt to make over Mariupol into a Russian city. One of the pieces that we had in that package was this attack on a theater in Mariupol, where people had gone and gathered because their homes were destroyed. The Russians blew up that theater, even though they had written children on the outside of the theater. They attacked the theater, and the Ukrainians themselves said about 300 people died. We did a visual reconstruction of the theater with video, with floor plans, with dozens of interviews with people to show that double the number of people had died there. So all of those things again made up this package of really telling the world what had happened in this port city that the Russians attacked. And again, we made the decision early on that we were going to throw every resource that we had at this because it's an important story to tell. These four journalists who were there, well, three journalists who were there the entire time at the beginning were, I think, and I said this the other night when they won the Anthony Shadid Award, this is a little different from when you're going to cover Afghanistan or when you're going to cover some foreign places. For Mstislav, Evgeny, and Vasilisa, this is their home. They didn't visit here. They were literally watching their families, their friends, other people that they know being killed in this thing. So it was just amazing to really be a part of because there were days where we simply did not hear from them. We had no idea what had happened to them, and then they'd pop up and there'd be like video coming in or pictures coming in, and then it'd disappear again. And so it was just like nerve-wracking. So I'd imagine how nerve-wracking it was for them, but and also a tribute to the people in the city of Mariupol who, particularly the doctors and nurses in a maternity hospital where they were, who gave them scrubs to appear to be medical staff because they knew that the Russians were looking for them. But without them, the world would likely not know what had happened in the early days of the attack on Mariupol. But again, this was, I would say in my 35 years of doing this, this is one of the things I'm most proud to be associated with, because again, everybody, Journal, Times, Post, everybody covered this, right? But we just felt like we needed to really go deep into what was happening in Mariupol. And so we had investigations along with people, paired with the people on the ground, and just the whole of the AP. Again, this is public service, so this is an award for the entire organization. We know the Pulitzer does name occasionally people for public service, and Mstislav, Evgeny, Vasilisa, and Lori were all named here. I think, and Marjorie, correct me if I'm wrong, I think the last time that happened was 2018 when Jody and Megan were named in the public service for the New York Times for their coverage of the Weinstein. So anyway, I'm happy to talk about any questions or.
I have two things I'd like to say. Well deserved. We're all very proud of you. And the second thing I have to say is I'm glad you weren't in our category.
Well, I will say this, look, and I've told, Marjorie this, because Marjorie actually, for those who don't know, Marjorie was my colleague at the AP for 3.5 years. So we worked together before she went on to more illustrious things. But my role in this, and I mentioned this a little bit to Richard, that, when the war started, I was the global investigations editor, so I oversaw an investigative team, and we had paired people with folks on the ground. And then when I took on this role, it's a little bit more, it's an adjustment because you're removed from the actual journalist. So I didn't edit anything, right? I looked at some stories that Mary would send me, and I had some comments, or Jeannie would send me a script and I would look at it. But, it's a struggle because you're not a person, you're not driving the car, so to speak. And I talked to both Marty Barron and Dean Baquet about this at one point, and their thing was, you set the ambition, raise the level of expectations, and then give people the time and resources, and then get the hell out of the way. And that's what I tried to do here, was to make sure that, both Mary, Jeannie, all the other folks who worked on this had the time, the opportunity, and the resources that they needed to do this reporting that our amazing staff on the ground had done to bolster that reporting and elevate it. So again, it's one of the things that I'm most proud of in my 35 years of doing this.
Brent Sweet had a question.
Yeah, I'm impressed by your humility in not mentioning the photo.
Well, he did ask about the public service.
Because everybody knows that Fred.
I hadn't heard the mention of photography yet.
Well, okay.
So I had to step up and compliment the staff of the Associated Press for winning that category also in Mariupol.
Yes, so that I will say this, and I'm happy to debate anybody about this. I think the AP has the absolute best photography staff in journalism. I'll debate anybody about it.
I'd say there's no need for debate because the Associated Press has won more Pulitzers in photography than any other news organization.
It wasn't good there, but since you mentioned it, but yes.
And it's always being rated.
And two of the folks who are actually on the enterprise team, which I oversee, that Marjorie used to run, that were part of the package that ran. But if you look at the photos, those there, just like when the AP, the year that the AP won for the upside down flag with the backdrop of the burning liquor store
Mr.
in
Quartet,
Minneapolis.
in
right?
your Baltimore
Yes.
bureau. they did
So
great program.
when I saw that, I knew we were going to win a Pulitzer for that. And I thought the same when I saw Evgeny's picture of the pregnant woman on the stretcher, who later died. And because that became, or is, the visual of that war. It encapsulates everything that you need to know about the Russians' assault on Mariupol. And again, I sent out an email congratulating to everybody, and Felipe Donna is one of the other reporters who's on the Enterprise team. And I congratulated him for winning his second one, but he actually said, oh, I've only won one. So I said, I'm not going to do a correction on my email. You're just going to have to win another one next year.
On the other hand, the Associated Press has a tremendous global reach, so they have photographers everywhere, which has a lot to do with why they've won so many.
Right.
But when I was at the Associated Press in my time, this may speak to the transparency or the influence of the judges from the other newspapers, but our team won a Pulitzer through, when I was there, my team won a Pulitzer, because my only goal was to beat New York Times, Washington Post. At the time, USA Today was in the mix, and the LA Times. So I don't know whether we won because when there are 4 photographers that I mentioned and the 2 other wire services were on scene, the AP, my team, had the above fold photograph in this long-running saga, political saga, and on their own papers, beating their own staffers. So, and of course, the jury is usually weighted by those newspapers and those news organizations. And I'm still stung, for anybody still stung by the influence of certain folks on a panel that would overturn the great work by the late Les Payne. It's been stinging me for a long time when it comes to the Pulitzer jury, where you're unanimous, everyone knows it's the winner, and all of a sudden it's not the winner. So if we have someone still on the panel who'd like to speak to, making sure that travesty never happens again, that would be good.
Well, we have Marjorie, the administrator of the prizes. Do you have anything to say about that to Marjorie?
Before my time.
Are you aware of it?
I don't know the details of that, no. I've been in this job for about a year. I know that almost every year, and this may have been a more grave situation, there are entries that people felt were a shoo-in and were going to be the winner. And when they weren't the winner for whatever reason, everyone feels that they were robbed. Sometimes they were, sometimes they weren't. But I've only been there for 2 of these judging processes. And this is my first full round there, where I select the juries. And both times there have been people who felt that there were grave injustices. And we're still paying for things that, we get letters every year for decisions made decades ago. So that's neither to, support or say they were right or wrong. It's just to say that there's always very strong feelings around these awards.
Look into that Les Payne case for me.
Okay, I have another question for Marjorie, and that is, since we're talking about specialties, one of the other specialties is cartoonists. We don't have any cartoonists represented here, but they were rather upset that the Pulitzers decided to eliminate the category of cartoonists and instead have them as part of a broader illustrated, I forgot what the exact name of the category is, but they are part of they are part of an illustrated category. So I just wondered how that what kind of reaction have you gotten to this new way of doing things?
Mhm. So the decision to do that was made again before I arrived. Last year was the first year. This was the second. There was a very big reaction to it the first year. It's called Illustrated Commentary, Reporting and Commentary. And it is a work in progress. And there's been some discussion about whether it should have the word reporting in there, or reporting in, or just commentary. I think that this year there hasn't been as much pushback, perhaps, because 2 of the 3 finalists were traditional cartoonists, as we think of them, editorial page cartoonists, doing generally single pane or double pane cartoons. I think no, they didn't win, but they were no, they didn't win. And I think that's as much a reflection of the times as it is a reflection of their work, because it was all 3 finalists had fantastic work. And the juries don't make when they give their 3 finalists, they don't say 1, 2, 3. They just present the 3 finalists. They don't recommend one above the others. And it's the board that makes that decision. I think that part of the issue was that the board felt that as the editorial cartoonist population diminished in the country or didn't grow in the country in the traditional cartooning, it was the same people entering and winning for the same kind of work over and over. And they wanted to expand the pool of people who were doing that work also, but different kinds of illustrated cartooning. So that's the thinking behind it. We invited a lot of cartoonists to be on the jury, many of whom said no because they were going to, they didn't say this, but it was because they were going to enter their work. So there's also not a huge pool of cartoonists to pick from for the juries.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you. Okay, we're going to go into our introductions. Right here in the room, I want to have Marie Nelson come on up. Yay! Marie is now at ABC News, one of the executives there, but she is heading to Toronto. So congratulations, and tell us about that. And congratulations on your husband.
I'm so excited. Yes, June 1, that's a big day. I am going to be joining the team from Hot Docs, which for those of you in the documentary field know as the largest documentary festival in North America. Yes, it's not Sundance, not Tribeca. It's in fact Hot Docs with our neighbor to the north. And in addition to the annual festival, which every year presents about 220 documentary films, they've got a ton of year-round programming, everything from development funds to programming funds to finance documentary films. And so I am incredibly excited about this new journey to get back into the pure documentary lane, which I've loved since my time at PBS. So this is great.
If I can just brag on Marie for a second, in addition to being the mother of 2 wonderful soccer award-winning children who in their just post-toddlerhood have been the MVPs of their team. She birthed Soul of a Nation on ABC, as some of you know, which was really just brought a lot of the energy of doc to the episodic format at ABC. And she also was given the all-time MVP as a doc advisor at a film festival because so many times she was voted the top judge and advisor. They had to retire her crown. So this is a beautiful transition.
Here. Okay. Yeah. Oh, we got to rest. Yeah. Okay, I see Hazel's hand up. But before we get to Hazel, I want to say we're going to start our introductions now. So Hazel can be first, but we want people to be brief and because we have a lot of folk here. So Hazel, where are you?
Thank you. Hi, I'm here. I'm Hazel Trice-Edney, editor-in-chief of the Trice-Edney Newswire, president and CEO of Trice-Edney Communications, also professor, adjunct professor at the Kathy Hughes School of Communications at Howard University. Can I ask my question now?
Yes, please. Go
Okay.
ahead.
I want to hear, maybe a couple of the Pulitzer winners. Congratulations to everybody, by the way. I just want to know at what point did you know, wow, this could be a Pulitzer? Or do you even think that way? Do you just think journalistically? Or do you suddenly get tingles and say, wow, what could this become? Just what was your thinking about the possibility of it becoming a Pulitzer? Or did you think that way?
Who wants to answer that one?
Are you pointing at me?
Whatever, whoever wants. Whichever winner wants to talk to that.
Look, I don't think that, doing and obviously the war is still going on. I don't think anybody just thought about it because one, we've got people in harm's way. So the last thing you're thinking about necessarily is a prize of any prize as prestigious as the Pulitzer is. So I don't think that there was a thought doing the process of the reporting. Obviously, once the sort of prize season starts, you do think, we have a good shot at this, just because of just both the subject matter, the backstory of the reporters here in Mariupol, and just the overall coverage, both in terms of, I will say in photography, yes, I did. Sorry, I'm not just saying that.
All right. We're gonna go to the next person in our introduction.
They just do excellent work and hope it wins.
Okay, let's get the whole screen again. Gallery view. Okay, Soledad O'Brien is on my screen at the top left.
Hi guys, Soledad O'Brien. I run a production company and anchor a couple of things, report for HBO Real Sports, anchor a show called Matter of Fact that we co-produce with Hearst. That's a weekly public policy show. And we produce mostly docs and series out of Soledad O'Brien Productions. Nice to see everybody.
Hey, good to see you here. Okay, all right, gallery, please. Okay, John Watson.
Hi, John Watson, a professor of journalism at American University and proud partner with Journal-isms.
Here. Okay. Roger Witherspoon. Roger.
Hi, thank you very much. And Richard, thanks for the invite as usual. I've been a journalist since the mid-60s and author of a book on the civil rights movement, which is one reason why I've always avoided Alabama. Thanks and have a great day.
That's hilarious. Okay, Corey Johnson.
Hi, I'm Corey Johnson, reporter at ProPublica. Very glad to get the invite to see a lot of friends and living legends who I deeply admire on this call.
Okay, thank you, Corey. Philip Martin.
Hey, folks. It's great to see everyone. I see a lot of familiar friends and faces around the table. And I am a senior investigative reporter with GBH News in Boston, a recent Shorenstein Fellow at Harvard, and currently in a documentary series on Netflix called American Manhunt about the Boston Marathon bombings.
All right. Michelle Smith.
Hi, everybody. My name is Michelle Smith. I'm an investigative journalist who specializes in the history of people of color. Lately from USA Today, where I was enterprise editor for racism in history. And there I created projects such as USA Today's 1619 project that took us to Angola and the subsequent Never Been Told investigative series. I am now a freelance looking for additional opportunities that continue to take me into my best working for people of color.
All right, and she's been a longtime member of the Roundtable group. Hey, Marjorie, we know anything we want to add, Marjorie?
No, just that I'm very pleased to be invited to be here, and I always learn something on these calls, and thank you.
All right, thank you. Kyle, anything you want to add?
I just want to say we are hosting an ABJ this year in Birmingham, or Birmingham is the host city, and we are very excited about it. Those of you who are planning on being there, come find me. I'll be there, and maybe I'll change a few minds about Alabama while we're here.
Okay.
So I want to add something. This is a public service announcement for Robin, who wanted to. I'm going to share the picture of the press release. The Wall Street, or the Dow Jones HBCU Media Collective began on Friday, and there are the fellows that have done it. This is the first one that we. There we go.
There it is.
That's the press release.
And we did have this in journalism.
Sorry about that. So I was just going to read from this. Now you can read it yourself.
Exactly.
But this is the collective. It's a partnership with Dow Jones, with Columbia University. It's for a week. And you can see it all right there. There are the universities. They're Howard, Morehouse, Morgan State, Spelman, Texas Southern, and Dillard University. But let's go back and see the pictures. That's
So it's happening right now.
yeah. It just began. Yeah, no, it started Friday, and this is our first year. They announced it a while back. I'm not sure when they announced it, but I said that we would announce that here.
Okay, and you have, thank you. All right, who's next? Let's go. That's great. Elliot Francis.
Yes, good morning or good afternoon, Richard and everyone. I'm a former news anchor reporter, 45 years, and currently the host and producer of Now with Elliot Francis, streamed live over Facebook and YouTube each week. And might I say, it's really glad to see everyone in the roundtable, in a real roundtable, back in my old stomping grounds of DC, doing it old school.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Okay, Jill Geisler.
Hi, everybody. I'm the Bill Plant Chair in Leadership and Media Integrity at Loyola University in Chicago. And as I see legislatures and boards of regents try to strip DBEI education and educators from higher education, it strikes me how blessed I am to be at a university where they build social justice into all of our coursework. And nobody's going to take that away. And I think we all have to be so vigilant about what is happening now at that level and keep fighting the fight.
Here, here. Okay. Good. Right. Kathy Times.
Good afternoon. It's really great to be here. Thank you, Richard, for the invitation and to see everyone, and congratulations to all of the winners. I hope that you will be in Birmingham because it really is an amazing place and I do miss it there. I plan to be at the convention. Right now, I have several businesses, but one is Yellow Brick Media Concepts, and I'm really excited about an upcoming documentary that you all will hear about pretty soon. But I also am an executive coach. And it's been a pleasure to lead NABJ's Leadership Academy for the past 3 years, where we help individuals do 4 things: assess, define, communicate, and activate the wow in their authentic brand story so that they can reach their next level of success. So to learn more about what I've been doing since I was no longer NABJ president, 2011, go to kathytimeswow.com. So I look forward to seeing everyone in Birmingham for the convention. It's an exceptional city. And there is, like Kyle said, a lot to be done there in news. And I admire him as well as others who have really stayed steadfast in business and continue to do
Thank you. Thank you. Karen Farmer, who's right here. Hi, good people. Okay, thank you, Karen. Karen Berry. Unmute, please, Karen. Speak, right. Karen, come on. She's on mute?
Okay, cool.
Oh, Karen, yeah.
She's finished.
Southeast.
Karen Berry.
She has to speak.
Yeah, are you muted?
She's not muted, it's
Oh.
on her laptop.
Oh.
No, sorry.
I'm looking.
All right. We can say something in the chat room. Hank, is there any, Hank Klibanoff, anything you wanted to add?
Right here. Whoop, here I am. No, but thank you. Thank you
Okay.
all. And I will see you soon, I hope. Take
All right,
care.
very good. Next. All right, Hazel, you've already introduced yourself. Joel Dreyfus.
Hi, everybody. I am, I guess it would take too long to tell you all the places I've worked, but I'm living in Paris, finishing a book and looking forward to NABJ this summer.
Here. I'm glad the time difference worked out for you. This time in the afternoon. Carmen Fields.
Hi, everybody. I, like Joel, have had so many different jobs in print and broadcast media, corporate communications, et cetera. But right now, I'm proud to announce my soon-to-be released book. So I'm an author currently. It's a memoir about my father, Ernie Fields, who was a big band leader from the late 20s through to the 60s. It's called Going Back to T-Town, the Ernie Fields Territory Big Band. And if that title sounds familiar, the documentary that I was a part of on PBS called Going Back to T-Town, that dealt with the race massacre of Tulsa, Oklahoma, will be rebroadcast all next week on PBS stations, American Experience. Check your local listings for details. Thank you, Richard. You're doing a fabulous job. I so appreciate your work.
Thank you, Carmen. Okay. All right, next, and Carmen is in Boston, of course. Krista Thompson.
Hi, everybody. Richard, thank you for the invitation. So inspiring to hear from all the Pulitzer winners. I'm Krista Thompson, managing editor at the Washington Post. Ron, I really appreciated what you said about supporting great journalism and being a little bit more removed from the process, but I could feel your passion and energy for AP's work that won, and I feel the same about Robert and Tolu and being able to play even a small part in supporting them as they went so deep on the story of George Floyd. If you all have not read the book, please do. It is, I think, a life-changing story, the way that they have taken one man's life and really told the story of the country. And, just watching them reach this career pinnacle has been really amazing. So thank you all for your support of them in this work. And I enjoyed spending the time with you this afternoon.
Oh, thank you, Krista. Appreciate that. Let's see who's next. Diana, you're next.
Oh, thank you, Richard. Diana Fuentes. I'm executive director of Investigative Reporters and Editors, and we are very proud of our IRE Award winners this year, including a couple of Pulitzer winners and finalists. So it was very good to hear from you all. I also teach at Texas State University. So thank you very much. Glad to be part of this.
Excellent. Glad you're here. Okay, well, we're able to make it. Okay, next screen, please.
That's it. You have to change the screen. I do?
Oh,
No, I think you do. No, you have it. I do? I don't think so. If you say so.
What a team you get.
Oh, Ingrid's next?
Yeah, go to
Okay.
In the meantime, I could say I was president of IRE for 2 terms.
Was it? Okay, Ingrid Sturgis, we didn't see you before.
Hi,
You
good
work there.
afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody. Great to see everyone. I think next time I'm going to try to be at the Roundtable. I'm Ingrid Sturgis. I'm chair of the Department of Media Journalism and Film at Howard University. And I think we have a couple of students in that Dow Jones program. So I'm really happy about that. And I just want to say hello to everybody. And it's good to see everybody. I've been away for a while.
Okay, thanks. Ingrid, she's on our strategy committee for journalism as well. Next. Okay. Oh, yeah.
I wanted to share the
James
names.
Zetta.
I wanted to share the names of those students. No, well, they said no, but they said, oh, we're afraid they'll try to steal them. I mean, Ron is here, you know.
Okay, James Etta Walker.
Hey, James Etta Miller
we see you,
Walker.
yeah.
Most of y'all, well, I've been around a long time and I had a lot of different names, but most people just call me Jamie. I am the editor for Emerging Audiences and Inclusion Storytelling with the News Journal in Wilmington. Also, the How We Live editor for the USA Today Network Northeast region, and one of the proudest pieces that I've worked on in this stint of my career was a piece by Matthew Corfidge, who wrote the story on the secret contested history of buffalo wings and how a Black chef got left out of the story. He was robbed of his credit. We do a lot of such stories like that, 3 of which we just got a Best of Gannett for last week. One was a documentary on healing the harm in Buffalo, on the Buffalo 10, the individuals who were unfortunately part of the massacre at Tops Supermarket. So hit me up whenever you want to. I've had the same phone number since cell phones came out in the 90s.
Okay, thank you. Mary Curtis, Mary C. Curtis.
Hey everyone, great and inspiring conversation. Good to see so many familiar faces. Zooming in from Charlotte, North Carolina, Mary C. Curtis. I'm a columnist and the Equal Time podcast host for Roll Call, covering politics, culture, and race. I also guest host Slate's What Next daily podcast, contribute to the NPR affiliate here, WFAE. I'll be hosting a panel next week, a community conversation on maternal health, actually, and I'm a senior leader with the Op-Ed Project.
Very good. Okay, Donna Owens is next. Donna, are you there?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you but not see you.
Okay, yeah, I apologize. I'm on my way to a graduation celebration for a young journalism student. Anyway, hi everyone. I'm Donna Owens. I'm a national freelance journalist. My bylines have included Reuters, USA Today, NBC, New York Times, WAPO, et cetera, et cetera. I'm based in Baltimore, and I guess you could say I'm a generalist at this point, but I have leaned towards politics and features. I'm also multi-platform. I'm TV, broadcasting, radio, and print.
Thank you, Donna. Thank you. Gloria Minot, are you there, Gloria?
Yes, I am, Richard.
And happy birthday to you.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you. I'm Gloria Minot. Thank you, everyone, formerly of WPFW Radio. Richard, I am so happy to join this crowd today. Everybody's so upbeat, so positive. Thank you once again for convening this this session. And I look forward to the next one.
All right. Thank you, Gloria.
All right.
At the end of the screen? Okay. All right, then we'll go to the people in the room. I will go from the backward forward. Now, is Yvonne still back there?
No.
Okay, good. Okay, Sharon. Okay, Marie, we've had. All right. Adam, would you introduce your colleague?
Good. I think I'm Adam Powell. Many of you know me.
Right.
From CBS, NPR, whatever. I'm now at the University of Southern California. And in addition to our 50-state and 4-continent election cybersecurity project, we have just moved in, as I think many of you know, and taken over a building 1 block north of here, what used to be the National Association of Broadcasters. I've done that. And I am in charge of USC Annenberg Center, Washington, D.C. programming with a number of new fellows, including our inaugural USC Annenberg Africa Fellow, Bob Wakesa, who's known to just arrived last month, but he's already doing 2 programs a month. One public, which is the 4th Monday, and tomorrow's the 4th Monday. It'll be with speakers from Mozambique, South Africa, and Kenya. And he also does an off-the-record session in the middle of the month. And we did one last week with the Embassy of Sudan. So,
all right. Rob, you want to say anything?
All right. Thank you very much. As mentioned, my name is Bob Wakesa.
in addition to.
Oh, you have to come in.
Oh, the speakers are up here.
You have to come by a microphone.
I'm sorry,
Right here.
yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. Okay, so as mentioned, my name is Bob Wekesa. I'm from University of Witwatersrand, better known as WITS. And Ron is always associated with us for a long time. As mentioned by Adam, I'm a visiting fellow at the USC Allenberg School of Journalism, just right here in DC. And apart from that, I'm Deputy Director of the African Center for the Study of the United States. Which is a newly established center.
Big job.
Based at VETS. I'm looking forward to work with all of you. I'll be getting in touch, and feel free to get in touch with me. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, Joe Davidson.
Joe Davidson. I'm a columnist with the Washington Post, NABJ founder, along with Joel Bright, who's on the call. And it's good to be back here. I worked in this space, Wall Street Journal, for many years. And most importantly, I'm a father, and a husband, and a grandpa.
All right. Okay, Matt Brown.
Hello, everyone. My name is Matt Brown. I am a national correspondent for the Washington Post on our democracy team. So I cover mostly voting rights, changing laws all across America, and then some of the more acute issues facing democracy, like the Fulton County investigation into Donald Trump. So just an honor to be here among so many living legends, as someone put it, I believe. And yeah, just happy to make the acquaintance.
All right. Thank you. Okay. Fred Sweets. Oh, I'm sorry, darling. I'm sorry. I didn't see you.
It's in the back.
Darlene Superville, White House reporter for the Associated Press, and I'm also co-author of a biography of First Lady Jill Biden. It's called Jill.
Yay. Well, with a bookstore near you are. Okay, Fred Sweets.
Fred Sweets, contributing editor to my favorite Black weekly, the St. Louis American, former staffer at the Washington Post, the LA Times, and the Associated Press.
All right, Betty Ann Williams.
Betty Ann Williams. I am a freelance editor, also an alum of the Associated Press, USA Today, etc.
All right, Lynn Adrian.
Lynn Adrian, I'm a board member with Journal-isms. I just recently retired from running the graduate broadcast and digital journalism program in Washington for the Newhouse School at Syracuse University, and previous ABC, NBC, CNN, etc. And now NANA. That's right.
All right, Farai Chidea.
Yeah, well, Richard, I'm so thrilled to be here. Farai Chidea, I'm at this point the CEO and primary host of Our Body Politic, which airs on WAMU at 6 p.m. on Saturdays. It's a weekly show that centers women of color and our political needs and cultural needs. It's about 2.5 years old, and we're about to do our first major investigation, and we just found the right talent for that. So it feels really great, and Lynn also helped us as we were struggle busing through our startup years. So we are thriving, and I'm so glad to be here.
Hey, Colby King.
Colby King. It's good to be here.
Good.
These days, it's good to be anywhere. I started the Washington Post in 1990, I think, as an editorial writer. Pressed into becoming a columnist, which I didn't want to become. I want to congratulate all of the Pulitzer winners. I was nominated to be a finalist in, I think, 2006, and I won a Pulitzer the following year. And you ask how it happened? It was all a crapshoot, right? There's no crap. It's all a crapshoot. I thought I did better work the year before. The year I won, I couldn't believe it. I didn't think I deserved it. I still wonder now how it happened. I'm in another world. I hear the words monetizing an audience. I hear the words driving people to sites. I hear perfecting my brand. I don't understand that language, but that's journalism now, and God bless you.
Here, here.
So did we talk about how you ended up here, right? I worked at the Washington.
Oh, that's
Post,
right, yeah.
For 11 years. And in 2006, that's where I won the Pulitzer Prize for the Jack Abramoff lobbying scandal with two other reporters. And Colby's right, it's a crapshoot.
Keep that in mind. Cynthia Roberts.
Hi, I'm Cynthia Robbins. I am a lawyer by training, civil rights, criminal justice. I have done, but now I have the privilege of working as an independent consultant on a range of issues, including international business development, nonprofit work in health, and also working to preserve the 50,000 plus document collection of the first poet laureate of South Africa, Mzizi Kunene, and help with the Kunene Foundation and a new exchange program with Howard University and the foundation. The students will be going in a month.
All right, very good.
And most importantly to this crowd, I am the wife of Jackie Green.
Okay, Benita Bing.
Hi, I'm Benita Bing, president of the Exposure Group.
Wait a minute, you're not on the screen. All right, how do we get Benita on the screen?
Well, he's in charge. He's
Okay. All right, it takes a second.
great.
I'm Benita Bing. I'm president of the Exposure Group, African American Photographers Association, located here in Washington, D.C. Also, the owner of the Talbot and Bing Studios, located in the Brooklyn Northeast section of D.C. And also producer of Mr.
That's right.
Prince.
Exactly.
Journalism Roundtable.
Excellent. Okay.
Indispensable.
Jackie Green.
Yeah, and today I am one of the co-producers. But I'm Jackie Green, formerly of USA Today. As Cynthia mentioned, we are doing a lot of consulting work in Africa. And 12 students from Howard University are traveling to South Africa on the 12th.
Sometime in early June.
Early June. For the immersion program there. One of our projects, we have a project in the Gambia that we're working on, and some in Ghana that we'll also be working on. And Cynthia she didn't say, she's the new chair of the board of directors of a new foundation to provide affordable quality health care to underserved communities.
Wow.
Okay, we've gotten there. Anything you want to add, Ron? Oh, okay. I think we've got introduced everybody. Did we leave everybody out on the Zoom who hasn't said anything?
Somebody needs to read Karen's.
Oh. I think she wrote something down.
Yeah,
She's an Anscape as the copy chief, general editor, copy chief. That's
That's a
good.
type of carrot.
That's true. That's true. In fact, Karen Bates uses that line. You're not that Karen. Okay, I think we've reached our limit here of, we've gotten to 3 o'clock, which is great, 3:05. So, but we can, since we have the room, we can still talk if we want to. And people on the Zoom can still talk as well.
There's dessert.
There's dessert. So thanks, everybody. There will be a printout of the chat room. I hope we have that chat.
I hope so too. I gave my best. I'm running out of gas.
And it says the recorded transcript will be available.
All right.
Okay, so that will be distributed. As soon as we get it. Oh, yeah, let's not forget our office manager, Charlie Martin, who was responsible for making sure all this runs smoothly.
Great to see and hear everyone.
Office at the Wall Street Journal, but also for all the Gannett people, of course, she's a veteran of USA Today.
36 years.
36 years. So.
And I've been at the Wall Street Journal for only 9 months.
Oh, wow. I got that. Okay.
And
So
we're happy
thank
to have you.
Glad to be here.
thank you, everybody. Can we just leave that on if they wanted to talk?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. But it's formally over now, but people can keep talking if they like.
Yeah, my.
Oh, never mind. Oh, I am in charge. All right. All right, well, never mind.
He was, came to the time, someone it's mine.
All right, so you gotta come back. All right. Fabulous.
What's he
Well, I'm over.
Yeah, sure.
So I had a fantastic name.
Right. So my main thing is.
Yes. So you got all my contacts.
When was that from? That's from my son. My son and his wife.
We do have 15.
Yes. And I speak with her.
Oh my God, how was that? That's what am I listening?
Yeah, it was like, this is when Dad, I'm gonna throw it away.
Well, you know, it's time, so, yeah.
2004.
Right. People, right. No. Naps and stuff like that.
Did she protest various things?
Oh, it's I'm gonna come by.
Always proud of my.
You never got to the election.
I just, you know. Actually,
Okay, Anton.
Yep. I will just send you everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then with my, and then at the end of the month, I'm meeting my daughter.
Jackie, you need to plug in that laptop if you want to do it.
I love great stuff.
It's part of the jazz festival. My daughter's
I live in Miami.
Oh, okay. I just sent you.
Save it.
Yeah.
You have to give me your information. We'll be in Miami on
I think about you.
And then next thing I knew, right, yeah. Next thing I knew.
Take me with this.
I was able That's fine. You know, so yeah, my contact is then on the back. Yeah, maybe I can have to go over for dinner, you know, or something, yeah, so. Yeah, but that's.
Oh, and I see she was telling me I was still connected.
They got their taekwondo, they do it all, they don't have any idea.
Always good. Always good. Who wants to cook on a Sunday night?
That's true.
No, you know what I think Sharon was saying, Joyce was coming, not George.
No, Joy, oh, y'all. No.
Yeah, that's probably what you're saying,
Yeah.
Joyce.
Think about it. About Zolta. Yeah.
The boy has sent you a message, you responded.
Yeah, wow, isn't that something? And I sent him the information too.
But all the other artists. This is one major video, but they're also like a chance to where they're gonna go on somewhere. Wait, come to Durban. We're helping you with the educational component of it. There are several. There, we work here, then we go to the.
So where you live?
Whatever they do, they will go and they'll stay with the family for 3 days. Kind of get, it won't be the total, immersion in Africa. It will be the tame version of that. Well, they're gonna be in Jordan. Yeah, I didn't want to know. I know that's right. I didn't really mention that. So we've been doing stuff like that, and suddenly this thing came about, and we tried to work with Howard. And then just suddenly Howard called out about, what? We got the grant, but we had to pull together and we were in June. It's like, when we have the students here, and they said, so you're the next liaison. Like, wait a second. We talked about that. And then we had January.
It's dependent on him. My life is not mine.
Those are my
Yes.
It's something they call up and say, and now
Sorry, that's okay. Ma'am, excuse me, are you done with your plate? Are you done? Okay.
I just didn't want to walk over it with the.
Okay.
I mean,
Well, here, let me give you mine.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure you know.
Anyway, we're doing that, and the other part we're doing, You could either give me a contact.
I'll do
That's one thing you're working on there. The other part is, from the doctor's came there about this time last year. We were another place in Ghana. And that train thing, you felt it was brain drain from Africa. And it wasn't quite what we wanted, like any DJ music. Early started, even around the world, signing this thing. We went, but the lawyers committee here that because there's a lawyer, so we counted there, they didn't do anything. So we hung out with the doctors, and over 300 in this group. And there's all of us that happened, but they were doing stuff. So we went to the teaching hospital with them, so we made a good impression. They said, look, we're incorporated in Florida, there's about 300 bucks per hospital, so all of them, business level, that, and we want to write, thank you, right? And it's like,
You don't feel like cooking dinner?
Disney school.
Yeah.
You know that. Think about you, man.
All right.
So sooner or later, I
All right.
always say it.
Okay, sounds
We
good.
gotta figure out what's what.
That's right.
And here.
Sounds good, man. You look at South as always, by the way.
Well, I figured if they say.
Yeah, are you?
Good to see you, brother.
Yeah, you too. Okay, that sounds
We'll
great.
get together and talk about it. I'll tell you about something.
Good job. So it sounds like that game was epic.
Oh my God.
That's so awesome.
Like if you'd gone to their soccer season last year, it would be like, hey, you want to give them exposure? But this ain't just
That is so cool.
as in like running in the opposite, like, the wrong teams, or just like hiding underneath your skirt, like they just were not. Today, I was like, oh my God, it was hilarious because in the first part of the scrimmage, coaches would come, but it was lightning. She was so proud because, Jerry and I were both there, and Megan, my sister Mary was there, and we were all there, so she was like, well, I'm gonna show my people.
Yeah.
I was like, but meanwhile, she had like that, she was like playing like movie, like there's nobody else.
Oh, yeah, not a team player.
Not a team player. I mean, to the point where she was like out of bounds.
Oh, no.
So finally, then they like wrangled everybody, corralled everybody back. And then out of nowhere, like Cleo, who basically is like kicking daisy, like in the corner or something, all of a sudden she decides, oh no, I got this now.
Yeah.
And next you know, like, she scores the first goal.
That's so cool. That is so cool.
Everybody was giving her high fives, and she was so excited. She was so proud, and I was like, again. So when she scores her goal, the only other goal of the whole scrimmage, it's against. There were three dragons defending.
Oh, I
It's got one goal lead.
Yes, yes.
Three.
That's hilarious.
And we kept saying, only one dragon in the goal. Only one dragon in the goal. But they had three defenders, and she still scored on.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That is so cool. I love that. And they're still taking kung fu or whatever.
Yeah, they're still taking taekwondo and they're still doing dance. So they're still trying all sorts of things.
I love it.
I bet she's like, I learned a lot.
Yeah.
If they have some, maybe I'll take some to
Yeah,
the
take some
girls.
to the girls.
It's funny. Are we able to put things out?
Yes. Like, I don't usually do.
Oh, you have an envelope?
What type?
An envelope, well, for a check to fit in.
Oh, I'm sorry, for what fit in?
Check. Writing.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, writing, I wrote the caterer check.
Yeah.
gotta like make sure it's a shadow. So if you can
Where did it come up?
My grandson. Got one graduate. Best friends, changes. One is Danny Boston. Yeah, he's on the board. His wife is Kathy Ross. She was appointed to be head of the statewide department. We'll talk, but it's good to meet you.
Likewise.
All right, I have to head out now. There's
Okay.
a block WABJ thing.
Oh, yeah. Well, glad this schedule was after.
Yes, definitely. I think there's something I need to pay. Okay.
Well, you can give it to me now. I'll just.
I don't have cash.
Oh, okay. Well, just
I can Venmo or anything digital.
let me think about this. I'll tell you what. Let's do it. This is GoFundMe.
Okay.
It's a GoFundMe for Richard Prince's journalism, or just journalism. Just put it in there.
Okay, awesome. Sounds good.
All right. Nice to hear. I'm glad you made it.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you. Nice to see you again.
Okay. Thank you.
I bought you 2 kinds, so.
Excellent. I'll give it right now. Okay. Oh, boy.
These placemats.
Oh, yeah. They've been there since Friday.
Yeah. We put them down early.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Vision, planning ahead. Did you get to hear much of it?
I do. I sat right out there.
Oh, good.
Yeah, it was great.
Okay.
I told Alma it's cool to be in a room with such esteemed journalists. I'm telling you, it's just amazing because we don't have that experience.
Oh, is that right?
You know, it's not the Wall Street Journal is not very diverse.
Well,
Not here.
Not
in this
here.
bureau.
well,
But
they're working on
yeah, that's what they say. I want to see it. I want to see it.
it. I hear
But if USA Today, we were very diverse.
you.
So it's just it's taken me some time to adjust to it because I feel like, I mean, I am starting all over, you know, in a sense, different newsroom. But they haven't started that diversity as well as I had hoped.
Right. Well, I tell you, I told Robin Turner and also Brent
Jones.
Brent Jones. Yeah. Somebody posted on Twitter a picture of the San Francisco bureau of the Wall Street Journal, and he congratulates them on it. And everybody in the picture was white.
Yep. Yeah.
So I said, the guy. I decided not to publish that. But they said, oh yeah, we'll work on it.
I hope so. Because even when I take
Is it
pictures
changing there?
No, I'm just telling Richard it has not. It's
I
a big adjustment.
remember here announced at some point that they were affiliated or, on staff at the Journal.
I haven't seen that here in this bureau. It may look different in New York.
No, I think they were here, but it was years ago.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
They left.
Yeah. I can understand.
What is this? Is this still on?
Well, I don't
Still
know.
be on, do it?
I don't know.
I'll turn it off.
Somebody else. Interesting. When I was here the other day, I would see when people walk by, I would nod or something like that, and they just.
Yes. No, I was just telling her, that's like, it's like starting all over.
Right.
We had to change the culture in USA, and it needs to happen here too.
Yes, yes.
It really
Well,
does.
make sure you tell Robin and Brent.
Yes.
They said that we better talk about it.
It's not turned on. Yeah, you need to.
Yep.
But it's still connected. It's still recorded.
Oh, so that's there.